Why men over 40 stop chasing women. The psychology behind it. Have you ever noticed it? The way a man who once burned with urgency, hunger, and restless desire slowly steps out of the chase. Not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with a strange, almost unsettling calm. He no longer pursues. He no longer proves. He no longer performs. The hunger that once drove him now feels distant, almost foreign, like a language he used to speak fluently, but has somehow forgotten. From the outside, this shift is misread. It is labeled as emotional withdrawal, fatigue, loss of libido, or quiet defeat. Friends whisper that he has given up. Culture tells a simpler story. Age has dulled him, routine has tamed him, life has worn him down. But this explanation is not just shallow. It is wrong. What is actually happening is far more disturbing and far more profound. The man who stops chasing is not losing desire. He is losing illusion. He is not becoming weaker. He is becoming dangerously aware. For decades, he was taught, explicitly and implicitly, that desire is proof of life, that pursuit is masculinity, that attention from women is the scoreboard by which his worth is measured. He internalized this script so deeply that it felt natural, biological, inevitable. But what if it was none of those things? What if it was a psychological contract he never consciously agreed to? A system that fed on his energy, his anxiety, his need to be seen? By 40, something breaks, not loudly, not dramatically, but irreversibly. And once it breaks, the chase no longer makes sense. This is not a story about dating. It is a story about identity, power, and disillusionment. Number 1. Desire stops feeling like power and starts feeling like control. Have you ever wondered why desire once felt intoxicating and now feels exhausting? In a man's earlier years, desire masquerades as power. To want, to pursue, to conquer attention feels like movement, like agency, like proof that he is alive and ascending. Desire gives structure to chaos. It offers a simple equation. If you are wanted, you matter. If you are chosen, you are valuable. And so, the chase becomes not a choice, but a compulsion, a ritual repeated endlessly in the hope that one more victory will finally quiet the unease beneath it all. But desire is a liar. It promises power while quietly draining it. By 40, most men have accumulated enough evidence to see the pattern. They have chased and caught and felt nothing. They have been admired by people who never truly saw them. They have watched desire flare intensely and then evaporate without explanation. Slowly, painfully, a realization begins to form. Desire does not belong to the man who feels it. It belongs to whatever can provoke it. This is the moment where desire stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like manipulation. To desire is to be pulled, to be reactive, to be governed by something outside yourself. The man who begins to see this cannot unsee it. What once felt like agency now feels like dependency. The chase reveals itself not as freedom, but as a leash, a system that trains men to externalize their worth, to orbit attention, to remain emotionally unfinished so they will keep moving, consuming, performing. Desire becomes a mechanism of control disguised as passion. And this is where the shift happens. Not because the man has lost interest in women, but because he has gained interest in sovereignty. He begins to sense that every time he chases, he is negotiating his dignity. That every pursuit subtly places him beneath the object of his desire. That the constant reaching outward is preventing him from standing inward. This awareness does not create anger. It creates distance, and distance is fatal to the chase. So he slows. He stops reacting. He allows desire to exist without obeying it. To the outside world, this looks like detachment. In reality, it is the first act of psychological independence. The man is no longer driven by the need to be wanted, because he has recognized that the chase never proved his worth. It merely distracted him from the question of whether he had any without it. This is why men over 40 stop chasing. Not because desire dies, but because it is finally seen clearly. Number 2. He realizes chasing was never about love. It was about escape. At some point, usually without warning, a man over 40 begins to notice something unsettling. The chase was never really about women. It was about avoiding something else. Loneliness, emptiness, uncertainty. The quiet fear that if he stopped moving, stopped wanting, stopped pursuing, he would be forced to sit alone with himself, and he was never taught how to do that. In his earlier years, chasing served as motion. Motion creates meaning when meaning is absent. Desire filled the silence. Attraction Number 4. He learns that desire thrives on chaos, but peace suffocates it. There comes a point when a man over 40 begins to notice an uncomfortable correlation. The relationships that felt the most intense were rarely the ones that felt the most stable. Passion, urgency, and obsession almost always coexisted with anxiety, uncertainty, and emotional volatility. The chase thrived in environments where clarity was absent and unpredictability ruled. Desire fed on tension. It sharpened itself against insecurity. In his earlier years, this chaos felt alive. Emotional turbulence created adrenaline. Uncertainty created meaning. The absence of stability was mistaken for depth. The nervous system, constantly activated, interpreted stress as excitement and confusion as connection. Chasing made sense in this context. It matched the internal state of a man still trying to prove himself, still calibrating his identity through reaction rather than intention. But time changes the nervous system. After decades of emotional highs and crashes, the body begins to resist chaos. The same dynamics that once felt thrilling now feel draining. Arguments linger longer. Silence feels heavier. Emotional games feel childish rather than seductive. The man notices that the excitement he once chased comes at the cost of sleep, focus, and inner stability. And something inside him quietly refuses to pay that price again. This is where peace enters the picture, not as boredom, but as relief. Peace does not announce itself dramatically. It arrives subtly, through routine, solitude, and emotional predictability. It calms the nervous system. It allows thought to slow down. It creates space for reflection instead of reaction. And once a man experiences this kind of internal calm, desire begins to change its shape. Desire, it turns out, does not flourish in peace. It needs friction. It needs uncertainty. It needs something unresolved. When a man becomes emotionally regulated, the chase loses its fuel. There is no anxiety to relieve, no void to fill, no tension demanding release. Attraction may still arise, but it no longer escalates into obsession. From the outside, this shift is often misread as emotional dullness. In reality, it is nervous system maturity. The man is no longer addicted to intensity. He is no longer mistaking dysregulation for passion. He has learned that what feels exciting is not always what feels sustainable. And so the chase fades, not because desire disappears, but because chaos no longer feels seductive. Peace becomes the new standard. Anything that threatens it is evaluated carefully, and most pursuits fail that test. The man no longer runs toward what destabilizes him. He protects what calms him. Number 5. He stops confusing attention with intimacy. One of the most painful realizations a man over 40 comes to is this: much of what he once pursued was never intimacy at all. It was attention. And attention, while intoxicating, is not nourishing. It stimulates the ego, but leaves the core untouched. It creates movement without connection, excitement without depth. In earlier years, attention felt like closeness. Messages, compliments, flirtation, and validation created the illusion of being seen. The chase amplified this illusion. Each response felt like progress. Each interaction felt like proof that something meaningful was forming. But with time, the pattern reveals itself. Attention arrives quickly and disappears just as fast. It attaches to surfaces, not substance. By 40, many men have experienced enough relationships to recognize the difference. Intimacy moves slowly. It requires vulnerability, consistency, and mutual exposure. Attention moves fast. It thrives on novelty and fades when familiarity sets in. Chasing is optimized for attention, not intimacy. It rewards pursuit, not presence. This distinction changes everything. When a man realizes that much of his energy was spent cultivating attention rather than connection, the chase begins to feel hollow. He notices how easily attention can be generated and how rarely it leads anywhere meaningful. He notices how many interactions stimulate desire without ever touching understanding. He begins to feel the emptiness beneath the stimulation. At this stage of life, emotional efficiency matters. A man becomes selective about where he places his attention because he understands its cost. He no longer wants exchanges that excite the surface while leaving the depths untouched. He no longer wants to perform closeness instead of experiencing it. This is why men over 40 often appear uninterested in casual pursuit. It's not because they are incapable of attraction. It's because they have learned that attention without intimacy is a psychological dead end. It consumes energy without building anything real. So they wait. They observe. They allow attraction to exist without feeding it. They choose depth over stimulation, presence over pursuit. And because intimacy cannot be chased, only entered, the man stops running toward what cannot satisfy him. The chase ends where discernment begins. Number 6. He becomes protective of the life he built. By the time a man reaches his 40s, his life is no longer theoretical. It is no longer something he imagines having someday. It is something he has constructed, often slowly, imperfectly, and at great cost. Routines have formed. Habits have stabilized. A sense of internal order has begun to replace the chaos of earlier years. Even if his life is far from ideal, it is at least familiar, and familiarity brings a certain kind of peace. In his younger years, the chase fit easily into his life because there was little to disrupt. Time felt abundant. Energy felt limitless. Consequences felt distant. Pursuit added excitement without threatening structure because structure barely existed. But by 40, structure has weight. It is supported by discipline, responsibility, and emotional regulation. And anything that threatens that structure is felt immediately. This is where chasing begins to feel intrusive. Pursuit demands flexibility. It pulls a man out of his routines. It introduces uncertainty into schedules, emotions, and priorities. It asks him to rearrange himself around possibility rather than intention. At an earlier stage of life, this felt like freedom. Now it feels like erosion. A man who has fought for his stability becomes protective of it, not rigid, but deliberate. He understands how easily peace can be disrupted and how difficult it is to rebuild once lost. He has lived through enough emotional upheaval to know that not every opportunity is worth the disturbance it creates. The chase, once a source of excitement, begins to look like a threat to equilibrium. This protectiveness is often misunderstood as emotional guardedness or fear of commitment. In reality, it is an expression of self-ownership. The man is no longer willing to sacrifice the life he has built for attraction that may not last. He no longer believes that desire deserves automatic access to his time, energy, or inner world. So he slows down. He evaluates. He asks a different question than he once did. Not, is this exciting? But, is this compatible? And most pursuits fail that test. Not because they are wrong, but because they are misaligned. The chase ends when a man realizes that stability is not boring. It is earned, and earned things are defended. Number 7. He discovers that power shifts when he stops chasing. One of the most unexpected realizations a man over 40 experiences is the shift in dynamics that occurs when he withdraws from pursuit. For most of his life, he was conditioned to believe that power comes from action, from initiation, from effort, from pursuit. To chase was to demonstrate confidence. To desire openly was to assert masculinity. Stillness, by contrast, was framed as passivity. But reality reveals something else entirely. When a man stops chasing, the dynamic changes. Attention, once given freely, becomes scarce. Scarcity alters perception. What was once taken for granted now draws curiosity. The man notices that when he no longer pursues, he is no longer positioned beneath the object of desire. He is no longer reacting. He is choosing. This is not manipulation. It is structural. Chasing places a man in a psychologically vulnerable position. He reveals interest before certainty. He invests before reciprocity. He moves before knowing whether the path is worth walking. When he stops chasing, he reclaims leverage, not through strategy, but through restraint. Over time, this restraint produces a subtle authority. The man is no longer defined by need or urgency. He appears grounded, self-contained, and emotionally complete. Others sense this, even if they cannot articulate why. The absence of pursuit signals abundance, not of options, but of self-sufficiency. Importantly, this shift is not something the man initially seeks. It emerges as a side effect of detachment. He stops chasing because it no longer feels right, and only later notices that interactions feel different. Conversations slow down. Respect increases. Curiosity replaces expectation. This is where many men experience a quiet irony. The less they chase, the more they are noticed. But by the time this happens, they are no longer motivated by attention. The power they experience is internal. It comes from not needing outcomes to validate them. This is the point of no return. Once a man understands that restraint creates strength and that presence outweighs pursuit, the chase becomes unnecessary. He has learned that power is not in reaching outward. It is in standing still, grounded in himself. And once that realization takes hold, chasing feels not just unnecessary, but beneath him. Number 8. He recognizes desire is fleeting, but self-respect lasts. By the time a man reaches his 40s, he has witnessed desire in its many forms. He has seen attraction flare like fireworks and fade just as quickly. He has experienced moments when his heart raced for something he could not have, only to feel emptiness when it was obtained. He understands now that desire is fragile, temporary, and often irrelevant to long-term satisfaction. Chasing, by its nature, is an act of responding to desire, pursuing something external to fill internal spaces. In youth, this works because the self is still forming, still searching. Later in life, it is revealing. Chasing exposes not only the object of desire, but also the vulnerabilities of the pursuer. A man over 40 begins to value self-respect over short-term gratification. He realizes that compromise is not weakness, but surrendering one's boundaries is. That sparkle of attention, the thrill of pursuit, the validation of being wanted, these are all transient. What remains is dignity, which cannot be given or taken. It is earned daily in the choices he makes and the lines he draws. Thus, he becomes deliberate. He no longer chases indiscriminately because he has learned that desire is only meaningful when it respects the container of self. Everything else, all the urgencies, all the signals of need, are irrelevant. Number 9. He understands that absence can speak louder than presence. Absence is a language the young rarely understand. They chase because presence seems the only way to communicate value. But time teaches men differently. To be constantly available is to dilute one's significance. To respond too quickly, to invest too readily, to prioritize someone else's rhythm above one's own. This erodes influence. By 40, a man begins to see the subtle power of strategic absence. It is not manipulation. It is clarity. It signals that his life is complete without constant external validation. When he steps back, the world leans forward. Attention gravitates toward him, not because he demands it, but because he no longer does. The irony is profound. Those who once slipped through his fingers now seek his time and presence. Those who were indifferent begin to notice the value in what is withheld. And he, having withdrawn not for gain, but for preservation, witnesses the world rearrange itself around the principle that what is earned through worth, not effort, lasts longer. Chasing becomes unnecessary because he has discovered the subtle architecture of influence. Restraint is louder than action. Composure outshines urgency. And internal completeness generates external gravity. Number 10. He learns that true freedom lies beyond the chase. Perhaps the most profound lesson comes quietly. Chasing, after years of experience, reveals itself as a chain. A cycle of desire, pursuit, and temporary satisfaction that never fully nourishes. Real freedom is found not in winning or obtaining, but in release, the conscious decision to stop moving outward for validation, attention, or approval. By 40, a man understands that he is not defined by the outcomes he once sought. The thrill of the chase fades because he no longer needs it. His focus turns inward, toward the mastery of self, the refinement of his world, the cultivation of presence that is unshakable. Freedom, then, is detachment without apathy. It is participation in life, not as a pursuer, but as a fully present, fully sovereign individual. He can love, desire, and engage without dependency. He can choose without fear, act without compulsion, and exist without seeking permission. The chase, once intoxicating, now seems trivial. The energy it demanded is redirected toward creation, toward legacy, toward the quiet, persistent building of a life that does not wobble with every external shift. And in this final stage, the man is no longer chasing, he is arrived.